Okay, I'll start now. Okay, so I think again, also everyone here has like been to my sessions before, so like thanks for sticking till week 4. I don't have too much content this week. I just wanted to like go back over the stuff that we've done because especially last week we did a lot, but even in like week 2, week 1, we like did a lot. So yeah, I don't know. Let's just open up Unity, I guess. I'm gonna make a new project again. We're calling it week 4. Create. And now we just like wait for it to open. I think the only other topic, and if you haven't yet, you can download this. Did that not work? Download this Unity package that we're going to be playing around with. We did this last week, but I made a bunch of changes to it after like running that session. So and it also has a couple new ones that we're going to play with too, that are going to help us. The main piece of functionality that I wanted to introduce this week is just like different scenes and switching between multiple ones. It's a little bit tricky. Unity is a little bit tricky about it. So there's just like a little bit of caveats you need to know, but and also it'll help us like make like fun stuff. So I think after that I'm just gonna introduce like the concept of scenes, and then we're just gonna like work on a project together, just play around for a little while. So if there's anything from previous weeks you want me to cover specifically, like we'll have time for that for sure. Okay. So how should we start? Actually, let's start from the beginning. Let's like think about like what we learned. let's look at that for a bit. I think one of the big things from the first week, or the big things from the first week, were just like the tooling and like the panels and things like that. Like we have, like whenever you open Unity, you get this like default scene. It's got a main camera and directional light, which you can see in the the hierarchy panel on the left side here. You can left click on things here to like sort of highlight them, and when you do click on them, they show up in the inspector on the right side. You can see all the properties like the position and rotation, and if it's a light, for example, it'll have this light component and have all these settings, so I can like change the color if I wanted to. And same thing with the camera. Like even if I click the camera, I get a camera preview. I'm just going to do this thing because I do it every time. If I click over here, I'm just going to change it to solid color. I'm going to make it something more interesting. Deep blue, sure, why not? So yeah, you got the inspector, you got the hierarchy, you have your scene view that lets you like move stuff around. There's all sorts of gizmos. You can click them and move stuff different ways. You have other tools that let you like rotate things, like scale things, except scaling the camera won't do anything. You got this hand tool that lets you pan around. You got hella mouse things. Like if you hold right click, you could spin your thing around. And I found this out the other day. If you use just like arrow keys without the mouse, you can like move that way too. So that's like useful in some scenarios. But if you're holding the right click down, you can use WASD to move around, which like helps a lot. And then Q and E also lets you go up and down. If you have a middle click, which some people don't, you can like do this. And I actually think all of the controls are sort of different in on a Mac if you have a touchpad. So like good luck. I don't know. I don't remember what it's like. But I don't know if you have any tips on using this on a Mac and other people are on the Mac. Maybe you can share them in the chat or something. Okay, so those are the panels. There's also the game view, which is like a preview of what's going on. Now, right now we have nothing in our game, so like nothing happens. I can add stuff to the hierarchy by right clicking over here. I'll put in, whoops, I didn't want one of those. I'll put in a sphere. I can also add stuff to the sphere. I'm going to add a rigid body so that it falls. This enables physics. Rigid body is the physics engine in Unity. So if I hit play here, that thing should fall. There's like a difference. We learned about the difference between like play mode and not play mode. Like right now I'm like kind of editing the scene and nothing's happening, like nothing's going. But if I hit play, then like the scene actually runs, and any changes I make in play mode like don't persist. So like if I don't know, if I add some like stuff, I'm just gonna add random stuff and move them around, that's all there. But then as soon as I stop playing, that all disappears and we reset back to where we were when we played. What else did we learn? I think we learned briefly about materials. This is a good one to play with. So if we, I got the sphere that's like some ugly like white color. This is just like the default material. It's really boring. Go into my assets window down in the bottom, and I can right click it. I can create a new material. Again, like right click, create material. This is how you'll change colors for basically anything that you're working with. I'm just gonna call this blue and find a nice blue color in here. There's all these like crazy words in the default material, but just like don't worry about it too much. This one's a color picker. You can see it's got the eyedropper. That usually means color picker. Like if we look at the camera, it's got the same eyedropper here. It means it's a color picker. This one too, it's got an eyedropper. It means it's a color picker. So if we click on our material to have that show up in the inspector, we can change the color probably with the eyedropper thing, because that's not blue at all. Let's go. I like that. It's more of a periwinkle sky blue kind of situation, but I think it's like maybe a silver ash gray something going on. And if I take a sphere and I open up this materials in the mesh renderer, this is what like drives what the color is. Right now there's default material, which I was complaining about earlier, doesn't look very good. If we take our material here and we drag it into that spot, we can change the material of the sphere, and now we've got this like ash blue in here against the green. These colors don't match, just pretend that they do. Okay, so we went through that on the first day, and I think we just generally, after that, we're like, okay, well, now you can build stuff, right? Like we can make objects that aren't physics enabled, that can block other physics enabled objects, and we can set them up so our scene does interesting things. Yeah, so that's like a recap of week 1, and then for week 2, and I actually do want to use this project, so like I'm gonna ask you to go through this process like as soon as, if we don't remember, that's fine, but hopefully we're all logged into the asset store right now, and also hopefully already have this downloaded if you were here for week 2. But the asset store is a great place to get like a lot of stuff that's just like built out for you. I think someone in the chat was talking earlier about how they got some AR assets that they wanted to learn how to use, which is like great. But there was one that we worked with recently that I really liked working with. That was the low poly game kit. Yes, which is here. There's a free version, there's a paid version, but we worked with the free version. Let's import this into our project. Yeah. Whatever. It's gonna do all this stuff. Yeah. Oh, I need to install package manager dependencies. Whatever. So you can go ahead and do this now. If you don't know how, let me know, if you don't already have it, or if we need to wait for you to download. We're not going to start working with this immediately. I'm just going to step through the kind of stuff that I did again, but like quicker. And then later we're going to work with it. So like if it takes a little while for you to download, that's okay. But yeah, I was generally saying before also, like if you pay for assets on the, you see this screen, we got to import this. I mean, you can like deselect things if you want to, and that's useful sometimes, but just keep everything checked. Like it's usually not a problem. Oh, okay, you're making me restart the editor. Hopefully it's not a full restart. Yeah, it's okay. But yeah, if you do buy anything on the asset store, and then you give your project to someone else, they'll still be able to open it. They don't need to log into an account that has that asset or anything. Just like you won't have any problems. Yeah, you have to. There's not a good way to like look at the things that you've like quote unquote purchased. So just look for it again. Like type in low poly game kit and look for the one that we've been using. It's like I think there's a way through some crazy menu to like look at your past purchases, but sometimes it's not accurate. I'll go back into the asset store and we can look at it. Say again? Okay, so it sounds like you got it? Okay. Anything it says, just do the thing that means yes. It's like, oh, blah, 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 there's something happening here, hit like import. Or if it's like, oh, you need to upgrade something, hit upgrade. You need to install something, hit install. I'll reiterate this too. Like, if you're importing assets, you should really try as best as you can to do it at the very beginning of your project. Because if you start doing this while you have a project that's like, longer running, you can get really messed up by like stuff like this that we're talking about, where it's like, oh, well, this thing wants to mess with my settings. Oh, it wants to like change my scripting runtime or whatever. Like, if you do it at the beginning and you just let it do the stuff that it wants, then it won't break anything because you don't have anything, and then you just build off of what you have. And that's just like, I don't know, good Unity hygiene, so to speak. So, okay, I think all of my importing is done. I'm just gonna start like talking about like the process that we went through a little bit last time. We imported this like low poly nature, we imported the low poly game kit, which of course it disappears again when Unity game low poly game kit. Yeah, we imported this thing and it created this like low poly nature folder in our project. And if we click into it, we can see it comes with a lot of stuff. We talked about prefabs last week, so you might actually be able to understand what's going on here. But normally what we're looking for when we import Unity assets is like the very first thing we want to look for are demo scenes, always. Because we want to see like what the framework can do, how it's structured, and like what we can like play around with, right? And if it doesn't even work on in our project, we should know as soon as possible. And that's what's like good about like going and hunting down the demo scenes. Because if you download a framework and you open up the demo scene and nothing works, then you're like SOL. You don't want to try to figure it out before. You don't want to spend a lot of time trying to figure out how to use it and then realize that like nothing's going to work anyway. So I'm going to go in here. Went to low poly nature. I found the scenes folder where usually people put their demo scenes, and opened up the demo scene. You can see this asset came with a lot of this asset came with a lot of assets. And I think we went through this process last time, but I'm just gonna go through it quickly. Like, okay, cool. Like this lets us like walk around, and we can jump, and we can pick up items, and there's like the hunger meter, and I have a health bar, and all this jazz. I think for me, always with this project, the important thing is that it gives us a walking around system that is pretty robust, and also we can jump. So if I wanted to make like platforming games, I could with this. If I just wanted something to be generally traversable, this is pretty nice. And it also gives us this thing with the camera that lets the camera follow the person, which is fun to play with too. So yeah, like we're done evaluating. Like, oh, okay, cool. We can move with this thing. We have a nice little character to start with, and they can generally move around. And I think last time we did some testing on like what does it take for there to be like something that interacts with this character. And I think we discovered that it's just like if I take a regular cube and stick it in the scene somewhere. Where are you, cube? And then I don't know, I'll put it up here. If I just take a default cube without changing anything, we found out that the character still interacts with it. Like I can't walk through it, but if I'm good at video games, I can jump on top of it. It seems like I'm not today. Oh, there we go. So that means our job is really easy when it comes to like having this character interact with the world that we create. We just make some objects that have colliders, because these default objects always have colliders on them. And then again, like once you're done with the demo scene, usually you don't want to work from the demo scene. You just want to play with it to see like what they have. And in this case, this is like super true. Like look at this mess of a scene. Like I don't want to try to accidentally, or I don't want to try to delete everything and then accidentally like delete something I actually needed. And luckily in this case, it's very like, the dichotomy here is very clear. There's the demo scene and there's the simple scene. So like we're gonna work with the simple scene. And if in this case, like it comes with like the person and like some basic interactables, but like the point is that there's less stuff to have to delete here. So like if I were to work with the scene, I can just take all the things that I don't want. Axe, mushrooms, fireplace, terrain, green hill, part 2. Sure, I'll delete all those. I don't care. Whoops. And you can multi-select by like left-clicking and holding shift. It gives you like a list. Like if I click here, hold shift, and then click here, it'll select everything in between. Or you can hold control and it'll select things it'll individually let you select and deselect things. I think that's command on Macs. So delete all that stuff. I'm gonna put a box under my guy just so I don't fall I'll make a cube and stretch it out so it's like a big floor-like object. I'm going to take my person and disable the hunger rate. I mean, I remember this being a problem before where it's like, oh, well, if I don't set the hunger rate to 0, then my guy will die, like, and then like the scene will end, and it's like really annoying to deal with. So I'm just going to do that. I'm going to delete the HUD too, because we don't really care about seeing that. And I think now we have like a very, very, very basic like character walking around a thing, scene, that you can imagine working with to like make whatever kind of thing you want. And I think last time we went through a whole process of like taking other assets in here. Hopefully if I do something like this, now that we know about prefabs actually, like what we would do before is go into the meshes and add these, but if we look inside the prefabs, some of these might have colliders already set up for us. So if I go into prefabs in the thing that we imported and like take a stone, I can like drag it in. Chances are it has a collider already and it's already set up so that, yeah, there we go. So now we got so many more powers. So that's like pretty much what we did in week 2, I think. I think also we're gonna work out of this scene later. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna save it into my own like scenes folder. Save as. I'm gonna go File, Save As. And I'm in the root assets folder. I'm just gonna double check that. Week 4 assets. Yeah, looks good. I'm gonna click into the scenes here, and I'm just gonna, I don't even know what to call this, like simple walking scene. Well, I don't need to really write. Well, I'll write scene. Okay. Simple walking scene. Then this is just so we can keep track of it. Like I made all my changes. I don't necessarily want to save over the original simple scene because I might need that setup. So saving this as some other scene makes sense, and also putting it in my root project, knowing that like I'm going to work out of the scene. This is the reason I'm doing this. But for now, I'm going to go back to the sample scene just because it has nothing in it, or I guess it does have some stuff in it. And we're going to talk about the stuff that we did last week. So a lot of what we did last week was talking about hierarchies, and actually just to demonstrate like, yeah, that's fine. Just to demonstrate, we're going to look at the demo scene here. If we look at, let's see, this is a good one to look at. If we look at like this object, like lantern holder, last week we were talking about hierarchies. You can see that like there's definitely hierarchies like on display in Unity, or in this demo scene. Like if I take this lantern holder and I move it around, like takes all this stuff with it, but like all of these objects are like different. Like they're not, like this lantern is independent from the wooden arch thingy, and then even further down apparently there's a candle inside the lantern. Yeah, there it is. And then there's a lighting object that I guess like spreads light that's separate from the lantern holder. And the whole thing about the hierarchy is that like if we look at the transforms that, and anything that's a child object, so like this lantern is a child object, and this lantern holder, this is the parent object, these transforms are relative to this object. So like this one is -1 units in the x direction away from this thing. So if I move this around, these numbers don't change. Like that's still -1 in the x direction. And even if I rotate it, that number doesn't change. Right. If we look at it again, still -1. And you can kind of see it too. It's like this, I kind of set it off to the side so that it's like, you know, off to the side of this thing just to demonstrate. But like even now that if I rotate this, it's kind of the relative position of these like lantern pieces to the parent lantern holder stays the same. And if I modify like the children, I can change the relative positions to the parent. And this is like, this lantern holder is a really, really good example of like why you would want to do this, right? Because like you have this like asset. I'm just gonna keep hitting Control Z until it's back in. There we go. So we have this asset that's like the wooden pole with the thing, but then separately we have this asset that's the lantern, and we want to line them up so that it looks like they're one thing, right? So like, you know, we're gonna position this lantern in a place where it's like okay, that's lined up. We're just gonna pretend that I spent like an hour doing that, or however long it would have taken me. But if we had done this like just regularly, like as if they were separate objects. Oh my goodness. Okay, ignore what I'm doing right now. Okay, if we did this separately as if they were separate objects in the hierarchy, now if I wanted to move this around, it'd be really hard because I'd have to like select both of the things and move them together. And sometimes that can do some really, really weird things, especially with like rotation. Yeah, now they'll rotate independently. Look at that. It's like, really, this sucks. Like, can you imagine like, oh, now I've got to reposition this lantern so that it lines up with the bottom of that thing. And that's the same as true, like there's the candle on the inside of here too. Like if that was separate, we like, we would be just having a really, really bad time doing this. So the hierarchy is pretty often used to like group objects together in a way that's like sensible. So if I put this back inside the lantern holder, now like when I click on the lantern holder, and normally we would probably keep this collapsed, I can just move this around freely and not have to worry about like the lantern coming disconnected from the lantern holder, and these relationships like stay sane, even while I'm scaling, right? So like, cool. If you want to like really have like trippy fun, like I know like sometimes software just has like crazy trippy stuff that you can do, and Unity is no exception. If I like take a parent object and scale it like really dramatically, then I could take a child object and rotate it, and it starts doing like crazy stuff. It's like, whoa. And then you can like nest, you can even, oh my goodness, you can even like nest it so that like, I can like scale this one, but like rotate it a little bit, and then I take the child object and move that around, and then it's gonna like freak out. Like, what? So, if you're interested in like sick effects, you can do that. My favorite thing to do in Unity with sick effects is parenting things with random scales and then rotating the children. It makes stuff go wild. So yeah, that's the hierarchy. Let's go into, whoops, sorry, I'm moving very quickly. I'm going to go back into the sample scene. I'm just going to not save any of those changes because I was just doing some demonstrations, but yeah, if we wanted to set up our own hierarchy here, I can take this cube. I don't think this makes two. Actually, okay, let's do it this way. So I'm gonna make a cube, and also this is like a shortcut. I didn't cover this last week. If you right click on something and then do you create something out of that, it'll automatically make whatever you right clicked the parent of like whatever you created. Which is important partially because like if it accidentally happens, you probably want to know why that happens. Sometimes it can be annoying and you don't actually mean to do it that way. But so I've got this cube that I made. I'm gonna move it out here. Oh, I guess I copied and pasted. Oh, I did not copy and paste. I did a... Cool. Actually, I'm glad I ran into this because there's a good tip around this. So like if you'll notice, like I took this cube, like when I wanted to turn this into the floor, I took this cube and I made it like really, really big. Like but now I have this other cube that's just like normal as a child of the big cube, and it's like really, really big. And like one thing I can do to combat this is like I can make a cube and then I can move the transform in there, and it'll try to compensate. But if we look at it, you can see it's got that crazy property that I was talking about, where it's like, whoa, like what is going on with this object? Like that is not what we wanted. I wanted this slightly tilted big floor object, and I wanted this thing to look normal down here. And you can see even the colliders are like not correct. Like that's not going to be useful for us. So what we can do instead, and this is a common pattern when you need to do this kind of work, is we can make an empty. Yeah, we'll talk about empties now. So this empty is like an object with no components. Like if we look at the cube, it's got a renderer, it's got a box collider, it's got this like mesh filter which tells the renderer what the geometry is, and it's got the material and all that. But this empty game object, which is just labeled game object, has nothing, just has a transform. Just, let's get position, rotation, scales, so cool, super useful. But what this means is, and I'm going to set this to 0, 0, 0 real quick, 0, 0, 0, because luckily everything is kind of centered. Click on this game object, I'm going to take a peek at where it's positioned. Actually, I'm trying to make this cube a child of this game object, so I want to put the parent in just like a decent spot that like is sensible to me. so that when I rotate things, it'll make sense. This looks okay. I mean, I could spend more time lining that up, but that looks okay to me. And now if I take this parent cube and add it as a parent, add it as a child of the empty game object, now when I move the parent game object, you know, this is all the stuff that we talked about before with like the hierarchy and all this. But one trick is this cube now, I can like, well, I'm just going to delete it because otherwise it's going to do crazy stuff. But if I right-click the parent, the empty game object that I've been parenting with, or just talking about for a little while, I can make a cube now, and now it doesn't have the crazy scaling stuff. So, I don't know, this is just kind of like the danger of using the crazy scaling stuff, is usually you have to put it inside an empty game object so that, like, if I wanted to add another cube and move it around as if it were one thing, I won't get into trouble now, because this game object and aren't like directly related. So now I can like change the scale of this without like really worrying. And I guess what I'm doing, honestly, what I'm doing here is just making a sick ramp. So like, let's do it. Like I'm gonna make a ramp here. All right. I wonder if this would work even. Maybe if this is more steep. That doesn't look like a actual like ramp thing. It's like my internal simulation of like what's gonna happen here isn't really correct, or is saying that like this is not gonna work. But you know, maybe I'm wrong. I'm just gonna try making like a couple more. Let's see. Try to position that in here. Okay, that's fine. I think this lip is a little too long. Actually, I'm gonna do something like this so that. Okay, cool. And then I'm gonna move this over so that it has more time to like speed up. Yeah. Yeah. All right. Let's see if my sick ramp like is it. Oh, what is this garbage camera angle? All right. I didn't even think about that. Oh yeah, look at that amazing, beautiful camera angle. I think this is like generally a question too of like where do I want the camera to be looking? I think I want it to be freestanding in this scene. I'm just gonna say like we're not gonna think about this scene too hard. Maybe we'll duplicate the So I'm just gonna move the camera around. Oh, whoops. I really don't want to accidentally just click somewhere on this like invisible sphere because you can see the camera is like tripping out. I don't really want to move the camera this way. It's too confusing. I really want to lock it to axes so I can be very precise about what my camera movements will be. And honestly, this is just another tip too. It's like the order is pretty important here if we're using the gizmo. Because look at this. Like if I rotate with the green thing, it's like pretty easy to manage. Like I can reason about this very simply. It's like, oh, I'm just turning around. But if I tilt it down and then do that, like now I'm starting to get into like weird territory where like I don't really know what the rotation is going to be. So I don't know, just be mindful of that, I suppose. So I want to be able to look at the whole ramp, I think. And this is pretty good. Maybe I raise it a little bit. Nice. I'm just looking at the preview to line things up. All right, let's see what we got. If this doesn't work, I'm going to be kind of sad, I'm going to be honest. Well, we can adjust the angle a little bit. I'm gonna. I think the angle's like not steep enough. Let's make this more dramatic. How about that? All right, how about that? What is going on with this ramp? It's so bad. Man, maybe there's too much friction or something. I don't know what's going on here. Angular drag, let's set that to 0. I don't want that. Mass, make it really heavy. I don't know, is that good? Like, I don't think that matters though. In the mathematics world of this, I think it doesn't matter how heavy the object is. Alright, well that's a really crappy ramp. I guess we'll just have to live with that. I don't know, maybe if I put another segment in here or something, it'll be nicer. I kind of doubt it though. I don't want to spend too much time on this either. Even though like I totally am, because it's like fun. One last time. This is the last one, I swear. Ah, that one was worse than the first time. Well, alright, I'm just gonna Control Z. until we get to. All right, cool. So we got this like I don't know ramp thing, and the nice thing about how I've been doing this since I've like been breaking this down into segments is that now I can rename this into like ramp, which will help me get into the next thing that I was talking about before, which is prefabs. And I know this is like now we're kind of I'm just reiterating stuff we learned last week. All of this stuff is like really tricky, so like I'm happy to go back over anything if anyone wants, and I'm gonna actually try to organize this project a little bit this time. So I'm gonna make a new folder and I'm gonna call it prefabs. Like if we dig into the low poly nature assets, they have it like it's all there. They got documentation in its own thing. All the images are chilling here. You got the meshes chilling in the meshes folder, prefab, scene, scripts, all that. So let's try to stay organized. I'm gonna even make. Sometimes people do this. You don't necessarily have to, but I'm even gonna make like a materials folder and stick this material in there. But okay, I made a prefab folder. It's because I'm about to make a prefab. If I really wanted to like use this ramp in other places, and I can boom, drag it, take the game object and drag it down into the assets window, or the project window. And it took like since I was in the prefabs folder, it made this thing in here, and this thing turned blue. So now, and I'm gonna save real quick. Like for example, if I go into the walking scene and I go find the prefab that I just made and I drag this onto the scene, then we'll have the exact same object that we were just working with. And I don't think I exactly talked about like a lot of the reasons why this is super useful, so like I'm gonna dig into this a little bit more today. If we double click on the ramp and I like start changing stuff about it, it's like, oh man, I want to make the ramp good. It's just somehow not good. Can I? Is it possible? If I just made this part like really small, and then okay, let's try that. And I'm gonna hit Control S just so that I make sure. So this is like if I double click on this prefab, I get like a prefab editor view. Like this is like almost as if you treated the prefab as its own scene that you're working on. And this like lets you work on it in isolation. And now if we go back into the scene that we were working in, you'll notice all the changes are there. But even more interesting, if we go into the first scene that we were playing with, oh look, it's like, hey, you want to save your scene? Yeah, I really should. The changes are here too, because now this because this object is blue, that means this thing is like the same. This thing comes from. This isn't saved inside the scene. This object is saved like here. This is. The fact that it's blue means that this is a reference to like this object. So every time I like modify a prefab, it'll change everywhere that prefab exists. And in this case, I can prove that by like having this scene have the change, and also the simple walker that I stuck the ramp in also have the change. So that's really useful. Like for like if we go back and look at the demo scene, yes. If we go back and look at that, where is it? What's it called? Lantern. Maybe it's. Can I search it? No, lantern. Okay, yeah, sure. We go back and look at the lantern. It's a prefab. So like all of this work that someone presumably did to align the lantern holder, the candle, or whatever is like not lost, because somewhere in here, and it's probably here in the prefabs folder, there's a lantern holder prefab that has everything like pre-aligned for us. And if we wanted to like change the alignment of the prefab, like I actually wanted the lantern to be upside down because I'm making, I don't know, spooky wind, something happened. Now if we go back to this scene, all of my lanterns have kooky sideways lanterns. All my lantern holders have like kooky sideways lanterns. Just to reiterate all that. So prefab's really good for composing multiple game objects into one thing. So we've got we've got this like ramp thing. We've got yeah, okay. So the next thing that we talked about is like scripting, and this one was like a doozy. Like it really was. So I think we're just gonna kind of do this again. If you haven't already downloaded the scripts that we're working with, whoops. What did I just do? Oh, I just accidentally duplicated that. Whoops. Just pretend that didn't happen. Okay, if you haven't already downloaded this Unity package, download it now. I mean, I don't know what, like, I'm just gonna be like winging it right now, like in terms of like what we're gonna be building out. So, like, if you have any suggestions or ideas about what you want to see, put it in the chat, and I will try to make it happen. I think right now I have this like cinematic image in my head where like there's this one ball that goes down the ramp, and then I don't know, in like after a few seconds, like 100 more like show up all of a sudden. So the way I want to do this, and I'm gonna take the Unity package that I downloaded. I'm just gonna check my downloads so that, yeah, it looks fine. I'm gonna take this Unity package that I downloaded. I'm gonna make my window smaller so this is easier, and I'm just gonna drag it into my Unity like window. So I'm gonna take the Unity package. I'm gonna take it. I'm gonna drag it onto the project window in the bottom left. You know, I get this prompt about like, oh, do you want all this stuff? And I'm like, yeah, I want all this stuff. La, la, la. And yeah, if you were here last week, I think we looked at a bunch of these. Like maybe maybe let's like reiterate some of them. I think like, whoops, I wanted to look at this from the side. There we go. So one thing that I want to do is that I'm kind of like a little miffed that this ramp idea didn't work exactly as I planned it to. But maybe it'll be more interesting if I like spin this thing around while it's running. Because I think even if like, and this is gonna be really funny, even if I take this and spin it while, well, that's not so good actually. Whoop. All right, it's super. I didn't expect that. But we're just gonna do it anyway. We're just gonna do it anyway. We'll see what it looks like. So, scripts. I have made us like a bunch of scripts here that are all like relatively simple to use. I've also changed some of the APIs, so we'll see how this goes. Like I want to take this cube and I want to spin it around. So I'm going to add the simple movement script to it. I'm going to take, one thing you can do is you can take the simple movement script and drag it onto the inspector, though you have to try to find the in-between points in between other components to get that to work. You can also, and I'm just gonna, you can right-click a component and then hit remove component to delete it. But you can also, like, to add a component, you can click the add component button down here and type in the component that you want. So simple movement is a good one. This is the one we wanted. I'm gonna check real quick what axis I want to be rotating on. It seems like this red line, this red axis is labeled X, and I was playing around with this one, so it must be the X axis. So I'm gonna set rotate X to, let's see, what direction did I want it in? I'm gonna look at up here. I was definitely messing with the X, right? So like, this looks like it's decreasing. Or am I reading this wrong? Let's see. Oh, X is not actually decreasing that much. This looks like it's the Z axis. Okay, so I actually want to rotate in the Z axis. Well, I don't know why the colors are lying to me, but if we look at, like, I want it to go from here to here, this is like Z rotation 53, and this is Z rotation negative 39, so it's like pretty dramatic. This is definitely the Z axis that I actually want to be rotating on. Which is good, now I know. So we're gonna not rotate on the X axis, and we're gonna instead rotate on the Z axis. And this is in whatever unit per second, so maybe it'll take like 2 seconds for it to go all the way up. Let's start here. And I want it to go positive, so like let's make it like 40. Sure, let's see what that looks like. Hit play to test it. Uh-oh. Oh, that's not going anywhere. Oh, that's kind of fun. That's pretty interesting looking. I like this. I like what we got going on here. Alright, cool. Alright, cool. Actually, nice, cool. That's a fun concept, actually. Okay, we'll work with that, I think. And one other thing that I want to do, and this is like, I'm gonna set this up so that we can. I just like thinking about. It's like super fun for me to think about this. So it's just like me injecting my personal style. I'm gonna take a cube. I'm gonna make it like kind of tall-ish. And I'm going to make it flat, relatively flat. Doesn't need to be super perfect because we're about to do something crazy to it. I'm going to move it up so that it's like above this thing. All right. Okay, and then I'm going to take this sphere and I'm just going to like copy it and paste it. Control C, Control V. I'm going to move it up here. And then I'm going to make a bunch of these. And this is like one of my favorite techniques for making a bunch of things, is that like, okay, so I've got this sphere up here. I'm going to start this over. I got a sphere up here. I'm going to copy it. I'm going to paste it. And I move it over a little bit. So now I got like 2 of these. And then I'm going to select both of these. And I'm going to copy both of them and paste both of them. And then like move those. Now I got 4. I'm going to select all 4 of them, copy and paste them, and I'll move those. Ooh, I didn't paste accidentally. And move those. Now I've got like a bunch of these. And then we're going to take this cube down here and add a simple movement script to it and do the same thing with the rotation. I'm going to figure out what axis I need. I think this time it actually is the x-axis. Yes, it says x. And I'm going to take that and go like negative, I don't know, 20, I think, because I want it to go that way. Seems like the number is actually going up. It's going from negative 90 to negative 90 to negative 77, which is a positive rotation. So we'll do this. I'm going to play here. So the thing that's about to happen, I think, is that this will tilt over and let these down, but it'll take a second. Maybe I should even make that go a little bit slower. Let's make this like 5. La la la. So now we got this like weird cinematic thing where there's like this one ball, but then there's like a bunch more that come in and like maybe fall away. Cool. Cool. Okay. This was like a lot of like recapping and like stuff. So like thanks for sticking with me. Take a little breather. I'm gonna stretch a little bit. I'm gonna drink my water. But I think right now the thing to do is I'm gonna just like give us like 10 to 15 minutes to try to set this up. I know I didn't give anyone any time to like hey, go do this thing. So like let's do that now. Like, and if anyone has any questions about how I did anything, but I'm just gonna start over too. I think the thing that we want to set up is just, I don't know, like a ball falling onto a platform and then doing something interesting. Doesn't necessarily need to be a ramp. You can like, there can be an object that it falls on. If we want the pig back, and I think actually I do want the pig back because he's my like favorite little pig. Oh, and if it wasn't clear, like feel free to just start playing around right now. Like I think the goal really is just to take the scripts that we have, and simple movement is enough to get started. But if you're here for the other ones, I'll start talking about those a little bit too. But just like put something in there. You got like some tree assets. Maybe I'll make a forest and make a thing. I'm gonna get the pig. I'm gonna get the pig guy because I love this little piggy. Oh, that's not good. Okay, good. Okay, got my pig FBX. I'm gonna move this guy into my scene, or into my project folder. So now I've got a copy of the pig. I'm gonna do the thing where I'm very organized. I'm gonna do models and scripts. Whoops, I accidentally brought up a thingy. Scripts. It's nice that like, so I've got all these scripts and some of the objects in my scene have them. If I move the scripts around, the like references don't break. This is kind of why it takes some time for this to happen. It's because Unity is processing in the background. Hey, like what objects are using these scripts, and how should I change the references so that they stay connected. So now I put all my scripts in the script folder. That's great. I'll take my pig and put it in the models folder. So now my project is nice and pretty. Yeah, I'm gonna start over here. This is kind of fun. Well, I don't need to entirely start over. Maybe I'll just make this one a little bit more complex. I think it would be really funny if, like, I took the piggy and I made him face this way, and then I put him here, and then I made him, like, huge, like, massive. Oh, yes. It's like, I don't know, like an automated Pez dispenser or something. It's like he's out to lunch. That's what's going on here. Also, this is going to make the camera angle, like, really, really dramatic, I think, if I can get it angled right. I'm watching the time, because I said we would have 10 minutes to, like, make whatever scene you want to work with. You know, I wish I could pretend that... Well, I kind of still can pretend. Here, let's pretend that our piggy has an open mouth. So, like, I'm going to make a cube. And make it... maybe you can see where this is going. Does that look like a mouth bottom? Somewhat? A little bit? Kind of? This doesn't... I know this, like, anatomically makes, like, no sense, but maybe it'll communicate without, like, having to make it anatomically make too much sense. Yeah, sure, that's, like... Maybe if I make it pink, too, it'll look like a tongue and not a mouth, and then things will, like, communicate a little bit better. So, I'm going to go into my materials folder, because I'm trying to stay organized. I'm trying. I'm going to make a new material, create new material, pink. I'm going to name it pink, because I'm going to make it pink. And if I wanted to, I can actually pull, if I hit this eyedropper, I can, like, pick a color off of my screen, so you can see that there's, like, a weird little preview going on. If I point at my face, I could, like, pick the pink off my tongue, personally. Which, I've never done that before, but that works. I could also pick a pink off of the pig if I wanted, and that would be cool. So... Nah, I think kind of if I get the angle right, it kind of looks like our pig is sticking his tongue out. Sure, let's see what the angle looks like from the camera. Yeah, you know, we can work with that. And if I wanted to, like, I don't know, my artistic, like, I don't know, I kind of want the illusion to work. So one thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make another cube, and I'm going to make this one black. So I'm going to make a new material that's black. And I want this to be, like, true black, so I'm just going to, in the color picker, choose, like, the blackest black that I can get. I'm going to take this cube, and I'm just going to drag the black material on it. This is another way to do it. And then I'm going to make it, like, bigger. The idea here is that, like, you know, this pig's mouth is, like, cavernous. Like, there needs to be a sense of, like, his mouth is open. Even though we can see very clearly that the mouth is actually up here, just kind of forget about that. Just ignore it. Because we're just going to hide that from the camera. So now this, alright, cool. So now this pig is horrifyingly got his tongue open. And I wonder actually if these things line up nicely. Oh, so close yet so far. Okay, cool. Cool, good, because this is like an extension of a lot of the stuff that I was dealing with before. I'm gonna make an empty, and I want all these things to stay attached like I've been talking about before, so I'm gonna take the pig and the fake open mouth and the tongue. I'm gonna go ahead and scene view because this makes it easier. I guess I got these wrong. Maybe I should label these because I'm so organized today. Tongue. I don't even know. Mouth. I don't know. We'll just pretend that naming scheme is not sensible. I'm going to take all of these, I'm going to put them in the game object, the empty game object that I made. I'm just going to make sure the center is in a place that makes sense. Sure, why not? So now when I move this, like, game object, pig open mouth is what I'll call it. Now when I move this game object around, you know, I can, like, move it with the mouth and the tongue open without, like, losing track of it. Yes, great, that's a good one. So, okay, that's a good one to do, because that one's really tricky. Thank you for that question in the chat. So, I'm gonna move, I'm just gonna move this, this pig so that maybe I can get more of these to land on the tongue. This just seems like kind of like the fun thing to do. Oh, it missed. Way worse this time. What did I do? I guess it's misaligned here. Whoop, boop, boop, boop. Okay. So there's a question in the chat, how do we get the spheres to continuously spawn? And yes, this was really, really, really tricky last time, and I have made this easier with the script. So like, let's take a look. I'm gonna make a empty game object, and whoa, that's like not even close. Move you to where my spheres are. I'm actually gonna delete all of this for I mean, this is like a cute way to do it, but like, let's do it smarter. I'm gonna delete all of these. I'm going to click my game object. This is kind of in a spot where I want the other ones to spawn. Kind of. Yeah, sure. Why not? Yeah. Yeah, why not? And, okay, so, and I'm going to rename this too so we can, I'm so organized today. What is it? Sphere spawner. I don't even know, what are these? Blueberries? They're blueberries now. Blueberry spawner. Can pigs even eat blueberries? I don't know. Probably not, I would say. But we're just gonna, that's where we're at today. Okay, so I'm gonna go into my scripts folder, and we want to spawn a bunch of these blueberry things at once. And actually, the first thing that we're gonna do is make a blueberry a prefab, because that's kind of like what you do. If you're spawning something, you want it to be a prefab. That way you like can edit what is being spawned in a way that's like sane. This is just good practice. There's other ways to do this, but do it this way. So I'm gonna name this blueberry. Now it's blueberry, and I'm gonna drag it into my prefabs folder to make the blueberry prefab, and now I have a brilliant blueberry prefab. And then I'm going to go into my blueberry spawner, and I'm going to add the simple spawner script. Again, like spawn is a word for like, I don't know, creating from nothing or appearing. Like this thing has spawned, it has like appeared. It is now tangible where it previously was not. I think it's a pretty technical term. I don't know where this, I guess like it was used in some biblical like devil spawn, whatever, I don't know. I don't know what the origins are here, but so spawning is like this terminology is extremely common across like game frameworks, and even sometimes just 3D things or interactive anything, sometimes in film even. But okay, so we've got the spawner script. It's got a bunch of stuff, and this time it actually has some new things, but we don't need to think about that too much. I just want, the main one is like object to spawn. I want that to be a blueberry. I want it to spawn a blueberry. I want it to go forever. I just want to keep spawning blueberries. So I'm going to check repeat forever, and the time is set to 1, but maybe we should set that to like 0.2. So now if I hit play, and I'm going to look at the scene to make sure that this is happening, you can see that like, oh, it's kind of too fast actually. These are like tweaking out a little bit. So now we got, and this is super not, the aim is real bad. So we're gonna turn this frequency down. We're gonna turn the frequency down by increasing the time in between spawns. So I'm gonna go like 0.5. We need to wait longer between making new blueberries. Bloobs. That's right. It's like a, I don't know, really nice Pez dispenser. I'm gonna move this forward a little bit just to see what happens. I think it'll make things more consistent. Yeah, definitely. You know, I can look at this in the scene view, and it's funny to have this like, I don't know, blueberry churning machine. Oh, we got one on there. Yes. Yeah. Oh, great. That's great. Okay, that's great. So, hopefully that's a good place. Like, if you want, and this works for anything. Like, you can spawn a lot of stuff that way. Like, let's look at the camera real quick. This is such an undignified angle. Let's spin this around a little bit. Yeah, there we go. That's definitely better. Just for effects and fun, I don't know, let's do some kooky stuff. Like, I'm going to go in here and I'm going to make a cube that's like way in the background, and I'm going to add a simple movement script to it, and I'm going to make it like move sideways and upwards like this, like that, right? And we can see that like that's like Z positive. I'm looking at I keep pointing at my screen. I'm looking at these values here to try to get a feel for what direction I want things to move in. And it seems like it's going Z positive, because Z is going, if it's starting on the left, it's negative, and then I go to the right, it's positive. And if I start down here, it's negative, and I start up here, Y is, I'm talking about Y now, Y. So I'm going Z, Y positive, Z positive. So I'm going to take move X, move Y, and I'm going to go like 40? It seems really fast, and I think I do want it to be really fast. And move Y like, oh, whoops. I said Z out loud, and then I moved to X. So I want it to move Z positive, like 40, and slightly faster. So I think if we look at this, if we hit play and we stare at the camera, we should see a cube kind of move by. But I'm going to rename this to, I don't know, Shooting Star, I guess. Shooting Star. And I'll make a prefab out of that. And then I'm going to create an empty game object here. And this is something that I briefly touched on one time, and I think it's super important to know about. I want to move my, like, what I'm aiming for is I want the shooting star to just, like, keep going. Like, I just want more and more and more and more of them. So what I'll do is I'm going to take the shooting star, and I want it to start at this position because I kind of like the way that showed up. I'm going to right-click on transform and then hit copy component, and then I'm going to take the empty game object that I made, and I'm going to right-click transform again and hit paste component values. And this will just take all of the, the position, rotation, scale things that were on this shooting star object and copy them to this new empty game object that we made. And I'm going to call this shooting star spawner. If I weren't very organized today, I would have called it star shooter, because that just makes sense to me, but we're super organized today, so it's now that. And I'm going to add a simple spawner to this one again, and I'm going to make the object spawn a shooting star. I'm going to make that happen every 0.2 seconds, and I'm going to have that repeat forever. And then I'm going to delete the original shooting star because I kind of don't need it anymore. We'll just let the shooting star spawner do all the work. And you'll notice that, yeah, sweet. You'll notice that because the prefab has, oh my god, this screen sharing thing needs to go away. I'll put it somewhere. Okay, because the prefabs have the movement script on them, every time it spawns something, it'll just start going. So I've made this thing that just like constantly spits out these quote-unquote shooting stars. Actually, I need this to be like further down here, and like maybe down here. So that's like, I don't know, now you can make stuff that just like makes a bunch of other stuff. And I even like kind of want this to be part of my like effect. So I'm gonna take the shooting star spawner, I'm gonna make that a prefab, and then I'm gonna add like a bunch of them here. Okay. So now if we look at our scene, I don't know, hopefully this feels like dynamic and interesting, but it's like, whoa, like Piggy's going nuts with these blueberries right now. Wow, so cinematic and crazy. And I guess this is a good time to reiterate, well, one, save your scenes, so I'm gonna hit save now. This is a good time to reiterate, like I made this like spawner, and this is kind of true of the blueberry spawner too, but we just won't think about that for now. I made this like spawner, and it's really hard to see where they are. It's like really hard to see where they are, and it's like kind of frustrating. It's like, oh, well, I want to make the thing look even, but I don't. How do I know that this is going to look even? It's like annoying that the game object has like nothing that you can look at. So like, let's try to fix that. I'm gonna go into the shooting star spawner, and click the prefab and double click it. And now I'm like editing the prefab, like I was talking about before. And I can go in here and I can make like, I'm just gonna make a sphere so that I know that like, oh, this like spawns stuff, or like I can just like have a visual reference for this. And just to be sure that this isn't gonna mess with anything, I'm gonna disable the sphere collider over here, so that it like doesn't collide with anything. It's only just the sphere that like you can see, and not the sphere that like touches other things and affects their position. And now if we go back to the scene, because we were modifying the prefab and all of these spawners are prefabs, I can actually see where they were placed. We can see that like, yeah, this is like not super well distributed. I probably could do something like this, and I don't know, maybe align things this way. Maybe I'm going too far down, I'm not sure yet. But, and in this case, like, Well, that's not bad actually. Okay, nice. And then I'm gonna, oh, whoops. I'm going to move that up. I'm gonna copy these. I'm gonna do the thing that I was talking about before and copy paste them. And now I've got a bunch of them. La 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 la. Wow. It's kind of fun effect. It's really cheap effect. I mean, like it's not like the coolest thing in the world, but there's like some imagination. You know, you can get somewhere with this. But okay, cool. Yeah, so you know that's all well good. We got our first scene. So the thing that I wanted to talk about now are like having multiple scenes in a project, and I know that we've been through like a lot. So like, hopefully you came last week or you did it. So like that was like not as intense as it was last week because it was super intense last week. And if you're new to all of this, then this was super intense. So you know, cool. But okay, so the thing that we want to talk about today, or I want to talk about today, is having multiple scenes. So like, this scene is pretty fun to look at for a little while. But if I'm making a whole project, chances are like it would be really tricky for me to want to like to set this scene up so that it has everything that I want to accomplish in my like either storytelling or like experience development goals, right? So the nice thing about having scenes organized this way, like if I want to go from okay this crazy piggy eating blueberries scene to my walking scene, these two scenes are like organized totally differently. Like there's like, you know, in this one there's the guy and the stuff that he can walk on, and you know there's nothing crazy going on here. And in this one we have a very specific camera angle and we have a very specific thing happening with the background stuff that if this was flying around in here in this scene, we would just, you know, that would suck. Like, I don't even know how, you'd have to do some crazy organization stuff. You might run into performance problems because you got a million objects going at once. Like, you know what, we don't want that. So scenes are really nice for like organizing these sort of like, and scenes is a good word for it, even coming from like a film, like a filmic like conceptual world where it's like, okay, this is the, and I'll rename this now, blueberry, I want an underscore, piggy. This is the blueberry piggy scene, and then we're going to make a new scene that we're going to switch to. So I made another script. This is kind of why another reason we have an updated set of scripts. And I'm going to make, I think we talked about this briefly last time, where there's like, in a lot of projects, there's like an object that just manages everything. So we're just going to call this the scene manager. Because that's what it does. It's going to manage the scene. And the script that I'm talking about today is called Simple Scene Switcher. Simple Scene Switcher. So I'm going to click on the Scene Manager. I'm going to add the Simple Scene Switcher to it. And you can see we got all these like options here. We're going to talk about them like right now, actually. So if I look at my list of scenes, I've got this one simple walking scene that I want to switch to. I just want to switch to it. Maybe I want to look at this for like 5 seconds or something. I don't know. Something like that. So I'm going to take the switch scene timer duration. I'm going to make that like 4 seconds. And I'm going to check the box that says switch scene on timer. Because I want it to, when the timer goes, that's when I want to switch scenes. So after 4 seconds, it should switch scene. And here there's a thing that says scene name, and I just got to specify the scene that I want to switch to. I'm going to type in simple walking scene. And right here is the name, Simple Walking Scene. It's just the file, or the name of the thing. And this part's a little frustrating, and there might be a better way to do this, but I'm not exactly sure there's no good way to do this. But if you change the name of the scene, like unlike everything else in Unity, I'm going to save this real quick. Unlike anything else in Unity, if I change the name of this scene, like the thing that I just typed in won't update. So I'm going to rename it to like Piggy Walking Scene, just as a preview of like what I'm thinking of right now. This still said Simple Walking Scene, and now if I like try to run this, it's going to be like, hey, there's no scene called Simple Walking Scene. What are you doing? So I just got to make sure to rename that. So that's something to keep in mind. But this actually still won't work yet. So this is one of the weird caveats of like, or one of the other weird caveats of Unity and scenes is that when you're in the editor, like the current scene is like inside the project, like always. It's like, oh, the Blueberry Piggy scene, totally, it's in the project. Unity's like, yep, it's in the project, we're happy with that. But everything else doesn't exist. So the piggy walking scene does not exist when I'm in this context of the Blueberry Piggy. So if I hit play and we wait 4 seconds, 1, 2, 3, 4, nothing happens. And if we go into the console, it's like, oh my goodness, piggy walking scene couldn't be loaded because it's not been added to the build settings or the as blah 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 blah. And it's nice because it actually tells you like what to do. It's like, oh, use the menu file build settings. Oh, okay, cool. So, well, thanks Unity. Sometimes it's very helpful. A lot of times it's not, but this time it was. So I'm going to go into file build settings. And you can see, I don't know, we've got some low poly nature scenes loaded into the quote unquote build. And the button we have here is this button. It's called Add Open Scene. So I'm going to click that, and you can see that Blueberry Piggy is now in the list. But we want Piggy Walking scene to be in the list too. So I'm going to open that scene, and I'm going to open up build settings again and add this one. And now we have Piggy Walking scene in here. So just to reiterate, if you want a scene in your final product and you want to be able to switch between them, you have to add them to the scenes in build. So you open the scene that you want to like exist in your project. You go into File, you go into Build Settings, and you hit Add Open Scenes. And this adds whatever like current scenes are currently open in your project, and you can open multiple scenes at once, but we're not going to talk about that. You can add the current scene that you have open to this list, and now all of these things will be there. And importantly, when you build and run, it'll always start with the first enabled scene in this list. So right now that's actually set to demo, and we don't really want that, so I'm going to uncheck it. And I'm actually going to uncheck symbol too now. So like now, when if I were to build this, which I've demonstrated last time to just take forever, so I'm not going to do that. But if I were to build this and run the build, like the distribution, the thing that I would give to people to run, or like, you know, the web page or whatever, it'll start with Blueberry Piggy because that one's there. And you can reorder the list too by like dragging these around, which is only really, really important for the first one. Like if I want to start with Piggy Walking Scene, actually in this case, I do want to start with Piggy Walking Scene. We're going to start there, and we'll see why. I'm going to start with Piggy Walking Scene, and this is the thing that's going to happen, or the scene that I'm going to launch into when the build starts. And so yeah, and it doesn't, like, that doesn't affect like the play button at all. Like if I hit play here, oh, and also like now actually this should switch scenes. Like let's see that magic happen. 1, 2, 3, 4. Woo! Nice, brilliant. What was I going to say? Oh, yeah. Because I have the Blueberry Piggy open, like when I hit play, it always starts from the scene that you have open. Like that's like what happens. So sometimes it's a little bit tricky to find the scene that you need to open, but don't worry about that. This is like, if I hit play, it'll take the current scene and open it. And that's not necessarily the scene that like the game will begin, or the experience or the build that you make will like start in. Okay. Yeah. Okay, cool. There's one other aspect of scene switching that I wanted to kind of like create for us, and I'm just going to do this very, very simply at first, and then invite you to try this. Oh, actually, for now, like I'll give us like 5 minutes to make a walking scene again. I think everyone has the asset downloaded. So what you'll need to do, because I know we didn't get time to do this, is if you go into assets and then low poly nature and then scenes, and you open up the simple scene, and unfortunately I saved over the simple scene like I said I would not, and you want to delete everything except for the light, the camera, and the cube, or the light, the camera, and LP guy. You also want to change click on LP guy and change the hunger rate to 0, and then you want to save this scene as a new scene inside your assets folder, and if you want to put it in your scenes folder, you should, it already exists, and then call it something. I called mine Piggy Walking Scene. And then just to make sure, because you deleted the ground, maybe because I just told you to, you want to make a cube and then make it really big and then put it underneath your LP guy, whatever, and so that it has something to walk on when you hit play. Yeah, so do that now. Give us 5 minutes. I'm gonna go find the scene that the picky scene. I'm gonna clean it up a little bit. Whoa, I'm in the wrong spot. I'm gonna get rid of my ramp because I don't think I actually want the ramp here. Or maybe, you know what? Maybe I do. You know what? Let's go like 0.1, 0.1, 0.1. Okay, so hopefully everyone is good with that. They have like just LP guy walking around on a box in one of their scenes that's not the scene that we made earlier. I know that like there's a lot less like direction in this week's but hopefully hopefully we're feeling creative today. I've got a concept that I definitely am enjoying right now. Okay, and I'm gonna move this. Okay, so so we've got like a pretty basic scene, pretty basic piggy. Well, I've called it piggy walking scene, but we've got a pretty basic scene that where we have a person that moves around with the WASD or the arrow keys, I believe. And my concept and what I want to do is that I've added this like ramp over here that resembles, this. Remember this crazy thing? And I want to show this like quote unquote cutscene when I walk up and touch this rock. And there's a nice little, so like this is going to be pretty simple to deal with. Again, if we go into the scripts, we click on, well, I'm just going to delete this actually. Hold on. We're going to start from square one because I just realized everyone else's scene looks a little bit different. So I'm going to make a new cube, and I'm going to call this like scene switcher trigger. And I'm gonna put that like right in front of the dispenser that I like made or whatever. I'm gonna click here so that it becomes a trigger. And this is like, I think I vaguely touched on this before, but this is like how how do I say, like a lot of interactive things work, is that there will be like something that does something when something touches it. So in this case, when we're going to set this up so that when the LP guide touches this box, we move over to the other scene. So on the scene switcher trigger that I set to be a trigger so that, well, we'll see why. I'm going to create a simple scene switcher, and then I'm going to switch this to Blueberry Piggy, I think is what I called it. I'm just going to double check that now. Blueberry_Piggy, yep. I lost my scene switcher trigger, so I'm going to click on it again. And I'm instead of doing the timer this time, and I'm going to click switch scene on collision. So now someone's Unity crashed, making spheres. I will actually, I will talk, I'll have like a brief appendix on how to kind of prevent that from happening. There's a system, and oh my goodness, I don't know how to use my own keyboard. Okay, okay, I want to go touch this cube, and then, oh my goodness, now I'm eating blueberries. Woo, did it! Wow, what a full-on experience. Honestly, doing stuff like this will make your projects look so good. It's like people are like, holy crap, what is going on? It's like, wow, you got cutscenes? Nuts, I can't believe it. This like, okay, yeah. So the concept here is like really, really simple. I've got like this interactive scene that I like, just kind of took off the asset store. I stripped it away of all of its assets, and I added a little collider that when the LP guide touches the collider, it switches over to the scene that we made earlier with a very like cinematic, non-interactive thing. And then after 4 seconds, it switches back. I'm gonna hit save here real quick. One thing about this trigger is that we don't really want to see it necessarily. I mean, maybe, but not really. I'm gonna disable the mesh renderer so that it's invisible. And we can spend time like guiding the audience into this zone in some way. and I could talk about the design of this forever, but there's still this invisible collider where if I touch it, I get sent into my Blueberry Piggy scene. So this, just at a high level, that now these are like two different ways that you can trigger scene switches. You can do it on collision, so you can kind of imagine like if you have, I don't know, something interactive where you have a character that moves, or you can like throw objects when you click, like in a shooting game, or like if you have just a crazy physics thing going on where there's like a pachinko ball going around and you want the scene to switch when something touches something else, then you can use colliders to do that and use the switch scene on collision checkbox. But then if you have like a more like cinematic thing, or like a cutscene kind of like, oh, I just set up this thing that I want to look at for a little while and then move on afterwards, you can use the simple scene switcher in like timer mode and then just like set how long you want to be able to look at stuff. So yes, before I answer this question, well, I guess this is a question. Are there any questions? Okay, so there's an issue here, and I'm gonna disable the simple scene switcher so we don't like get kicked out of it. You'll get sent back when you stop playing, but I just want to stare at this for a little while. So there's this issue here where we're making a lot of cubes. Like if I look off into the distance, it's like that's it's not good. You can't just do that. I have a pretty beefy computer, but you can't just do that forever. You can't. You just really can't. You're going to crash the computer, you're going to crash Unity, one or the other is going to happen. So what you need to do is you need to make it so that some of these objects get deleted, like when you don't need them anymore. Like if I let these go off into the distance, after a certain point, like we don't see them. This is like purely a visual scene, so like why do I need all of these random boxes to exist off into the side? And again, this is sort of an appendix. Like if you're careful about timing and things, you may just be able to like sidestep this problem. But if you want there to be something that's generating stuff indefinitely, you just want to like look at it. This is important to deal with, because like you can't have like if I turn this scene into like an installation or something, I wouldn't be able to have it running forever, because after a certain point there would be so many blueberries and cubes that my scene would just crash, and my computer would crash, and then I have to go in and reset it, and nobody wants to do that. So what we need to do is we need to take these shooting stars and the blueberries, and we need them to be destroyed after some, in a way that makes sense. So if we look at our shooting star prefab, this is where we're going to start. We're going to start because we have all these shooting star spawners, and we know that they're creating shooting star prefabs, and I'm going to edit the prefab directly. And now we get to talk about another script that I just added today. It's in the assets folder, or it's in the scripts folder now. It is called Simple Delete Me. So if I take that one and I drag it in, or actually this time I'm going to type it again, Simple Delete Me. This one, straight up, this is your best friend. It's got the same things as the scene switcher. You can do it on collision, you can do it on timer. In the case of the shooting stars, I'm going to do it on timer. I'm just going to set it to something like relatively large, like 3 seconds. That way I'm fairly certain it's off screen by the time it happens. I'm going to hit Control S again to make sure that prefab is saved, and that's it actually. So if I like go back into my scene, and I didn't go over this, but if you're in the prefab editor, there's like a gray arrow on the top left here. That's how you go back to the scene that you were editing. You could also click it on the bottom, but so I saved the prefab. Now I hit play. I mean, it's going to look exactly the same because that's like the point. But if I go into the scene and I do the same thing that I did where I look at the cubes, now they're deleting themselves after 3 seconds, and now I don't have infinite cubes. It's like, great, cool. Like now this background effect that I've created is like has a consistent impact on my like memory and processing power. They're not just like an infinite number of cubes being spawned all the time. Not best, again. Okay, so we've solved that one. But there's this other problem of these blueberries are, they're falling down and they're just going. And there are also, like if I look at the hierarchy, you can see that there's just so many blueberries and they keep coming. Like they're just more and more and more and more. Like you see the list is going down. I'm going to scroll down again. More and more. So we got to do the same thing. But I think in this case we want it to behave a little bit differently because we don't really know how long the blueberries are going to be like inside this contraption. And especially if I wanted to make this contraption more complex and I personally like really do. If I wanted to make this contraption more complex, the blueberries might be here for like a while, or maybe some of them will get stuck in there, and I don't want to delete those randomly. So this is where like the on collision version makes a lot of sense. So if and this is going to be like, I don't know, maybe this will enlighten some people to how game engines work sometimes, but so I'm going to do this by making a cube. I'm looking at it from the wrong angle actually. I'm just gonna zoom out a lot, and I'm gonna put it like way down here. It's like this is definitely like we can't see it on the camera. Actually, I'm gonna make it even like lower. You can't you cannot see this on the camera. And we're gonna disable the mesh renderer in a bit anyway. Actually, I'll do it now. So like now I definitely can't see it on the camera, and it's super far below everything in the scene. And then I'm gonna make it gigantic, like big beyond belief. So I'm gonna take the X direction. I'm gonna literally just type in 9s until I'm satisfied. Okay, cool. And then I'm going to do the same thing for the blue axis, which is the Z direction. 5 9s again. 5 9s. There we go. So now we've got this absolutely enormous, monstrous cube at the bottom of my scene. And I actually should make it a little bit thicker up top. I'm going to make it like maybe like 100 units tall. Because something that can happen if if you imagine your objects to be like paper thin, objects will just like straight up fall through them because it'll like... That's just a problem that you have sometimes. So like things should have some thickness if you want them to like catch everything. And I'm gonna call this the blueberry deleter. Oh, wait a second. Oh, I didn't make this. I actually didn't make the script the way that I wanted to. So I just messed up a lot. All right, well, that's fine. Okay, if you imagine, and I'll make this tonight and post it again. Just imagine that there's a simple delete. It's funny. Imagine that there's a simple delete other script that has the same that has a collision parameter on it, and then like if anything touches that, it'll get deleted. Just imagine that exists, because that is the correct way to solve this problem, so that when the blueberries fall out of the scene, they'll touch this giant cube and then get deleted, because there's a script on here that's called simple delete other or something. But I actually didn't make that script, so we don't have it. So instead, we're going to do this like the fake way, and to dial all of that back. We're going to do this the fake way, and we're going to go into the blueberry. This is exactly the way that we did it with the other thing. And I'm just going to add a simple delete me. I'm going to do it on a timer, and I'm just going to make it like a really long way. Doesn't need 10,000 is too long. Maybe like 100, maybe like 50 or something. That's probably reasonable. If a blueberry is around for 1 minute, no one's going to notice if it gets deleted. So now we have a sustainable version of this scene, where like there will be at most 50 seconds worth of blueberries and at most 5 seconds worth of cubes. So now, if you set things up with the safeguard of like things being deleted after a timeout, you won't get into trouble with like crashing Unity if you like go. I mean, you can always like go nuts with spawners, but just like try not to do that. And I think the last thing I wanted to do before just starting to like not really have an aim anymore is to, I called this like the piggy walking scene, but it's not the pig, it's the LP guy. So I'm going to go in here, and I'm going to, so this is like a weird thing, like LP guy is like blue, and I don't really want to edit LP guy because it's in like some other scenes that I'm not really like editing, so I don't necessarily want to like change this one for any other scene besides this one. So what I'll do is I'll right click it and I'll hit unpeg prefab completely, and this converts a prefab into something that is just regular objects. So we look at it as like not blue anymore. And now I can go in here and like mess with this stuff like pretty simply. And all I wanted to do was like, well, before I delete the mesh, I just want to take my pig model and I want to add it to LP guy. Oh, it lined up pretty well, actually, already. Look at that. I'll get to the question in the chat in a second. I'm going to shrink. I'm just going to spend a little bit of time positioning it so that it's in like somewhat of a similar position. I mean, we're not going to get the animations, but this is kind of, we're in cheeky kitsch land anyway. And I've made the piggy a child of the LP guy object up here, because this is the one that gets moved around. If we looked at, I think we kind of discovered this last week, and 2 weeks ago, and I didn't really cover it this time, but this has the player controller script on it, so this is the one that moves around. And if I make the piggy a child of it, and just to demonstrate this, I'll put a sphere up here too. These will, like, this is just like arbitrarily positioned, but these will move around with the LP guy. So the last thing I'll do is I'll, don't necessarily want to disable it because it might get us into trouble, so I'm just going to disable the renderer. And now if I hit play, and now I've got my piggy and the sphere spinning around. I'm going to delete the sphere. Hopefully you understood what I meant and why I put the sphere there. But now we have the piggy in place of the LP guy moving around. I mean, he's not animated. Like, if you want animations, that's a whole different topic entirely. But the whole point of this scene is that there's a blueberry feeder over here. You walk over it to it, and now your piggy is super happy and has infinite blueberries. And you can go back after. Oh, I disabled the scene switcher, but yeah. So this is the experience we've created today. Is the I don't know, piggy finds infinite blueberry dispenser story. I know it's a fable, a famous fable from age-old Philippines where my great-great-great-grandparents were born. They told me this story. So I'm going to re-enable this so that my scene is totally complete. Okay, so someone says, I keep switching scenes regardless of if I touch an object with the scene switching script. Okay, so there's a couple reasons this might be happening. I mean, I hope you have. You said Unity crashed also. I hope you have that project around still or can. But just to think about what might be going on is that if you're using the switch scene on collision part and it starts out colliding with something, I think it'll switch automatically. Oh, I guess not. Well, that might be something to look out for. It's like if you have some movement or some thing falling around that might accidentally touch this, it'll switch scenes. And also, if this component is on something else that has collision set up, if I put it on LP guy and I do simple scene switcher, blueberry piggy, and switch scene on collision, then when LP guy object touches the ground, it'll immediately switch, which we don't want. That's not good. So that's another thing to look out for. Yeah, that's the best I can. I mean, the thing is, with these scripts, they're very, just think about what they do, and then think back to what you have done that might cause the behavior to trigger. It sounds like your Unity is just super unhappy with you, which that sucks. I'm sorry. Maybe force quit Chrome or something. Maybe it's doesn't have enough RAM to function or something. Restarting my computer always helps, but I understand that you don't want to do that right now. So okay, yeah. Yeah, I think that's generally all the content that I wanted to get through. I think we'll do one last little thing of turns out working on a 7-year-old laptop isn't the best. Yeah, it's definitely not. We'll do one last little thing where I'm going to make another scene here. I'm going to call it Piggy Walking Scene 2. I'm going to put it in my scenes folder. Just to reiterate how this part works. So we've got Piggy Walking Scene 2, and I want to make Blueberry Piggy go to Piggy Walking Scene 2 now. And if I go into Scene Manager, I can change that here. Piggy Walking Scene 2. And I also want Piggy Walking Scene 2 to go to Piggy Walking Scene when we're done. So the scene switcher trigger, I'm going to change this to Piggy Walking Scene. And I guess I'll delete the ramp and then I don't know, change the color of the cube to black or something so we can tell what's going on. I'm in my mind there's a story here where boo-hoo, no more blueberries, but then he wakes up and it's all a dream, and then he's like, wow, there's actually blueberries again, and then the whole thing goes around in a circle that way. So okay, yes. So I think that is pretty much everything. Oh yes, see this is kind of why I did it too, because if I try to do the I think the first scene that I set it to was Piggy walking scene 1, and if we try to like quote unquote like play the game, this is like the first scene that starts, right? We set it that way, and now if I like go through this whole thing, la la, oh wow, there's a blueberry feeder. Oh, I'm so happy, there's blueberries. 4 seconds is not long enough. It should be like 20 or something. Or oh yes, yeah. See, it's complaining now. If I look at the console, I was expecting it to switch scenes and it didn't, and it's because we didn't add that scene to the build settings. So, yes, good to. I'm happy I did that again because I even forgot about this step. So I'm gonna open the scene that I want to add to my build settings, add open scenes. I mean, it'll complain at you if you end up doing that. So just like, I don't know. Hopefully I just helped you remember to do that because it can get confusing when that doesn't happen. So yes, is there anything that people wanted me to go over? I went over the spawner again. I can talk a little bit about camera movement because I know that's like a good one to think about. So like in this scene, like let's do things differently. Actually, I'm gonna delete. There's like some kooky scripts on here. Remove component. Okay, so now if I hit play, I've just got a regular old camera thingy. Like it's just like, whoa, that actually makes it so much harder to control. Like I don't even. Okay, I've just got a regular old camera thing going on, and I want it to. What I want is I want the camera to like spin around this scene so that I can see it from different angles, and this is going to make it really, really confusing. I'm going to enable this mesh render so we know where we need to go, but this is going to be a game in and of itself to try to play this. So what I'll do to do this is I will take advantage of the hierarchy, and I'll put an empty game object in the center of where I want the camera to rotate around. I'm going to need to move my camera a lot to like get a feel for this seems good. Then I'm going to take the camera and I'm going to make it a child of the game object, and I'm going to call this camera spin parent. And like before, I'm going to add, yeah, sure, I'll do that next. I'll add a simple movement, and I know just from experience I want to spin the Y. I want to spin the Y axis, but we'll just make sure, yeah, that looks good. Yep. And I kind of don't want it to move super fast. I'll go like 30 degrees per second, super fast. That was 6. Okay, that's what that's what I meant. Oh, that's not fast enough. Let's go 16. I like being lazy and getting numbers that I may not. Sometimes, okay, this is just another personal philosophy thing, but like, why use round numbers when you're doing stuff? Why not use some funky numbers, you know? Why not? So this is like super confusing because now if I press W, it like, wait, what? Oh, what? Whoa, okay. Somehow the movement is relative to the camera, so I actually didn't expect that to happen. But okay, anyway, well that's how you spin a camera around the scene, and now it'll be really confusing to do the thing, but if I go touch this, I end up back in the reset position, and everything here is normal, and all of that. Okay. Can you go over how the simple scene switcher works with the collision setting? Yes, I can. So I'm going to do this again. I think it's like, so I think we sort of talked about this before, but the trick about collision events is that they only happen when one of the objects has a rigid body added to it, like is part of the rigid body physics system. Because collision events are a part of the rigid body physics system. And in this scene, the LP guy, he's got like a capsule collider that we can see, and also this cube collider at the bottom. It has a rigid body on it. So this is the thing in this scene that's going to trigger the scene switching thingy. Like, how do I say it? The scene switching collider behavior or script. So I'm gonna make a new cube, and unfortunately I can't really come up with too good of a story right now. But I'm gonna make a new cube, and then I'm going to add the scene switcher to it. Simple scene switcher, and I'm gonna check the box that says switch scene on collision, and then I'm going to send it to Piggy walking scene. And that's kind of all you need to do. Because in this case, we already have something that is a rigid body, and if I go ram it into the object, it goes. That's kind of all you need to do. And there's other ways you can like reason about it too. Like if I have a sphere, like again, like okay, here I'll even demonstrate it this way. If I open the scene, I've got this sphere that has a collider on it, so you sometimes, I guess, would expect that like, oh, yeah, like this is what you'd expect that this would trigger a collision event because both of these have colliders, but that just doesn't, like, again, collision events are part of the rigid body physics system, so, and because neither of these objects have the rigid body on them, they aren't part of the physics system, and there's no physics system to report collision events. But if I do the same draggy whatever thing with this guy, whoop, we get the scene switch. Because, you know, all the physics, again, like the LP guy had a rigid body on it, so it was doing the physics stuff. And I know I talked a little bit about, oh, I'm going to get rid of this sphere. I know I talked a little bit about those events before, like one of these is scripts, like simple collision. I mean, I kind of like, I taught y'all like the whole thing about events, but I think it wasn't worth it, so like just kind of forget about it. Most of these scripts will work on their own now. So the important ones are simple spawner, simple movement, which we talked about a lot, simple scene switcher, which we've also talked about a lot, and simple delete me. And I think like look out for like in the next day or two, like simple delete other, which is another script that is very handy in a lot of situations. And I think like, I don't know, I guess I can just like talk a little bit about like what you can and can't do with these. I think this simple scene switcher thing is very like powerful because it lets you take, like, this is kind of what enables you to take assets off the asset store and then use them like efficiently or like simply, easily in your own projects. Like I took the walking system, and I could even go take, like, check this out. I could even go into the big demo scene that I was complaining about. Man, I would never want to work in this. And I'm just gonna like make a. I actually already am like it's not well organized. I'm gonna make this gigantic. I know it's got a collider on it, yeah, and then I'm gonna add a scene switcher to it, and I'm gonna have it send me to, I don't know, Pig Blueberry Piggy. And this is how, like, I like plagiarism. This is how you get like real nice plagiarism. So like, if I walk over to where I made that giant arch that I kind of don't exactly remember where it was, not there. Walk over to wherever I put this arch. I think I just followed the path, and that's what I was doing wrong. Okay, no, that's not it. Oh, I better be able to do this before I lose all of my hunger points. Maybe it's this way? Oh my goodness. I don't understand this scene at all, apparently. Oh, it's definitely this way. Oh, it's definitely this way. Yes. Now I see this giant arch, and oh. Did it not work? Huh. Okay, that was... Oh, I didn't check this box. Ha. Switch scene on collision. Click. Okay. That's my fault. Okay, now, for real this time, 100%, actually, if I go find this object that I very like quickly drafted to in my scene, I go touch it and I get sent into a scene of my own creation. So you can take like entire projects or and I'll talk, actually I want to talk briefly about this too. Unity just made a bunch of premium learning, quote-unquote learning resources free forever, which is really nice. Learn, I don't know. So a lot of the Unity Learn resources are like quote-unquote like complete projects. They'll be like a race car game or a shooting game or a platformer or whatever. And you can kind of like think about how you can like replace some of the assets to represent what you want, and then use things like scene switching to like put things into a place where things make sense. Like if you kind of like ignore like traditional game development needing like scores and systems and ways to keep track of stuff, and just think about like things in storytelling, you can get going like a lot quicker, in my opinion. So yeah, and I think a lot of the Unity Learn resources are scattered across all of these. I should just put all of these things in one doc. But yeah, this is a little bit, even a little bit more content, or I've been going on for a little bit longer than I usually do. So like, I'm open for more questions. I know like Sadie probably wants to say something about the evaluation form. Like, do the evaluation form. Maybe that's the whole thing. It really helps us like figure out like what we're doing wrong, like where you guys come from. Like, it's just like this is the first time we've run these sessions. This is the first time I've ever taught these sessions. I really want to know what you guys think. I think we really want to know what kind of stuff you're looking for. I don't know, Sadie, if you want to say more. Yeah. You got me for 10 minutes. You can ask me the most difficult questions you can think of. Yeah, thanks for coming, really. You've been great. I've been really enjoying teaching.